What's up, everybody? This is the Coast to Coast Podcast, an emergency edition of the Coast to Coast Podcast, and we're brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. All right, y'all. You know, we do these emergency podcasts. It usually means something big, and this time it's a commitment from, you guessed it, the GG Jackson update is coming to an end. He's actually finally made his decision. He will be joining the North Carolina Tar Heels. For those of you who have been under a rock and have not been asking and texting Sherrell on a daily, asking him how things were going with GG Jackson, GG is a 6'9", 210 pound power forward from Ridgeview in Columbia, South Carolina. He is a top 10 consensus player, no matter you look at it, 5-star kid. Real offers came down to, and Sherrell's been kind of monitoring this as long as Inside Carolina's been following this kid. Kind of came down to Duke, South Carolina, and Carolina. Sean, I'm going to go to you first. Where do you see GG Jackson projecting at the next level? You see him as a 4.5 for North Carolina or a 5.4?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's pretty exciting that we're doing this. Top 10 recruit coming to Carolina. Hubert Davis is first top 10 recruit. But in terms of position, I think definitely 4.5. At 6'9", he's naturally slotted as a 4, but with that size, he can will be able to guard larger, especially as teams go smaller. I think the main thing defensively for him is that I think for so long on the defensive end, the 4 has kind of been an area of concern for UNC when matched up with smaller opponents that maybe are natural wings. I think with him, he's going to be able to switch to the pick and roll situations. He's not going to be a liability when it comes defensively. So I think that one of the best things about him is just that versatility defensively of being that natural 4, having the size to play the 5, but also just kind of the versatility to switch on to guards and kind of stay with them on the perimeter or in ISO situations.
So first off, thanks for the analysis, Sean. I think a lot of people have generally bagged on this class and, have kind of downplayed the overall talent, but also the top talent in this class. I mean, do you see him as legitimately a 5-star talent, regardless of what class he would have been in?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think when UNC offered him initially, and this is going back about a year ago, 24/7 had him ranked, I think the 34th prospect in the class. And even just watching some film, you could say, he's ranked 34th now, but he's definitely moving up just based on the size and what he's able to do, with the ball in his hands and offensively. And I think we definitely saw that rise come very, very quickly towards the end of the summer and into the fall. We have talked about the class. Obviously, it's been hurt by some people jumping up, maybe not as strong as in years past. And I think you always have to take that seriously because you see the programs with one and done, that really focus on one and done players. They can make a Final Four when it's a strong class, or they can struggle and not make the tournament when it's a weaker class. But I think with him, he's a 5-star player. Now that can range from, a top 5 player where it's a for sure, one and done, you're going high lottery to, that 10 to 25 range. And then it really depends. But I think for him, I mean, he has kind of the intangibles that the NBA will look for in terms of a one and done player. He has that agility. We'll kind of touch on it maybe later, what some of those areas of improvement are. But I think just watching him play and go up and down the court, you can see the 5-star ability right there. But definitely a lot of things to work on to continue to grow and become, not just a player in the ACC, but somebody that can impact the game as a freshman, which is easier said than done.
Somebody who I know is happy this recruitment has finally come to a close, in addition to GG himself, is our guy Sherrell McMillan, because now he can actually go to church without, every deacon on the deacon board asking him when GG's going to commit or where GG's going to go or whatever. So Sherrell, do you want to tell us a little bit about how this recruitment unfolded. And granted, I think, it sounds like the player wanted things to come to a close a lot sooner than they did. But it just seems like this from the very jump was a kid that Hubert Davis and his staff put all their eggs in a basket for this guy. And now that they've got him, can you kind of give us a kind of a peek behind the curtain as to how this unfolded from your vantage point?
I think so. If you go back to around 2012 when Roy Williams was still head coach, I think the year Hubert Davis actually might have gotten hired. The College Basketball Coaches Association basically they had an unofficial rule that you don't offer anyone before June 15th of their rising junior year. So like June 15th, they just finished their sophomore year. You don't offer anyone. And Roy Williams held on to that for a long time. And eventually, he kind of went away with it. But June 15th has been the date when you can start contacting juniors. Head coaches can start contacting juniors directly for a long time. And for UNC, under Roy Williams, probably the last 7 or 8 years of his coaching career, it wasn't a big deal. Hubert Davis in year one kind of changed that. He got the job, I think, April 5th, and they started making contact through high school coaches and parents and everything with a few of the sophomores who they've eventually would offer. But Jackson got offered the night of June 15th. UNC saw him in a couple Memorial Day tournaments with his CP3 team, and just, the potential that Sean saw, everybody saw it kind of oozed onto the film from his games and everything. And so UNC called him on June 15th and said, hey, you have an offer from UNC. And honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if he ended it then. And that's going to be kind of a recurring theme with this. He visited UNC a couple of weeks later, and he was like, I kind of thought about committing. And the word we were getting the entire time was that UNC was the leader, and that's where he would eventually end up. I think it took a little bit longer, and there were some detours and stops that, probably we didn't see coming a year ago. But from the beginning, sources close to him and just around high school basketball made it clear that UNC and South Carolina particularly were going to be really, really tough to beat. And I think once you add in Hubert Davis's first year, how that kind of flipped itself, and he was able to see himself in Brady Manick and see himself in Leaky Black, and then Frank Martin's dismissal, any notion that there was kind of a tie between South Carolina and North Carolina went away. And I think that pushed North Carolina, frankly, to the top. And I'm really curious to see what would have happened if Frank Martin stayed, but I still think he probably would have picked North Carolina, but we'll never know. But a tremendous gift for UNC Hubert Davis. I mean, his first class he had to put together in about 2 months, and his second class, which is his first time through a full recruiting cycle, he has 2 consensus top 15 players in the 2023 class. So he's showing he can coach, and now he's showing he can recruit. So he's kind of 2 for 2 in that department.
So you mentioned the other recruit that he's got a commitment from, and Simeon Wilcher. We'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to stay with the performance that Hubert Davis and the Tar Heels had this year. How much of that do you think played into GG Jackson's, I guess, cementing of what he originally felt in his gut? You mentioned that he could see himself playing in Hubert's system, but how much of his commitment was reinforced by the success that Hubert Davis had this year?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, if you are someone like him who has the pedigree of being a top 10 player in the class, which likely means a lottery pick in a couple of years, you don't want to trust your career to just anyone, especially someone who probably at that point hadn't coached a game before, hadn't led a practice before when he got an offer from UNC. So that was kind of a common theme. Duke was in on Jackson as well. And I think there were kind of the same question with John Shire. And for Hubert Davis, everything that he laid out to Jackson, I think they talked about seeing on the court. Like I mentioned, Leaky Black and mentioned Brady Manick, they kind of were able to visualize and see it. And that was a big deal because it's real easy to listen to someone give you regale you with stories about how awesome their offense is going to be and how much stuff you're going to do. But when you can actually see it and be in front of it and watch it and review it, I think that was, like I said, it was huge. And I think that's why we're talking about Jackson to UNC today.
Sean, Sherrell just mentioned Simeon Wilcher, who is a young man that committed back to the Tar Heels. Gosh, I guess back in October. Does that feel right?
Late night with
late night.
That's right.
During Gigi Jackson's official visit.
Because I remember we talked to Sherrell, and Sherrell was sitting in the Smith Center with all of the music and people talking to him, trying to do this podcast. So I remember now. Simeon Wilcher, just to refresh everyone's memory, combo guard, 6'4", out of Rochelle, New Jersey, Rochelle Catholic. As Sherrell mentioned, 2 top 15 consensus kids. Sean, what do you see out of those 2 guys from the minute they walk on campus? Are those guys instant contributors? I know we're trying to project a UNC roster, a year and a half out now, but do you feel like those 2 guys are instant guys that you just slot in and expect a certain amount of minutes out of them?
I mean, I think they're 2 guys that I think you can definitely slot in now in terms of, especially more from, the guard spot could be a little more crowded, hopefully, if it is still RJ and Trimble, and it lets Simeon come along a little bit slower. But even if it's not, I think, yes, there are 2 guys you can slot in immediately. You have a guy that can likes to have the ball in his hands, is really kind of a pass first mentality, and now you put him together with a big man that loves to run the floor, can do a lot offensively as well as defensively, and now you kind of have two really strong pieces that can come in immediately. We can go back. I might have been a UCLA podcast or another one we were doing, and we were kind of talking about players ranked below, basically 51 through 100, and how little impact that they do have as freshmen. So, once again, these guys are going to come in and they're going to have expectations around them. But, then again, on the flip side, we just watched a team that had played together for now really their second year, and a lot of them are coming back for another year. You get that when you have 5 stars that aren't, sexy for the NBA, or 4 stars that have some NBA deficiencies, where these guys, we're talking a 6'4" guard and a 6'9" 4. So the likelihood of them being around 1 year is a lot higher. So there's a lot more pressure on them to pick it up quickly and to kind of, interact. We end up talking about these guys more often in recruiting and committing to Carolina than we do if they are only one and done. But once again, I think a good problem to have, especially given all the eggs that were in the GG basket for the 23 class.
Hey man, ain't nothing but a GG thing, Sean. Sherrell, I want to get you to talk a little bit about GG's game, because you did see him in Orlando recently. Sean's seen his game a lot too. So Sean, I'll come to you after I let Sherrell speak to this. Give me 2 things that are represent how incredibly high his ceiling is as a contributor at North Carolina, and then maybe if you want to list something that you think he can probably improve on. And Sean, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
I think Sean nailed it with the areas of concern that UNC has had guarding the 4 in previous regimes and over the last few years. He kind of eliminates that immediately. He doesn't quite have the strength. And that's the other thing too. When we did this podcast with Cole Anthony 3 years ago, like he was close to a finished product because he was a senior. Gigi's only a junior. So this is like a year ahead of where Cole Anthony was when he committed. I only made that comparison because he's just not a finished product yet. I think people need to make sure that they're not looking and projecting junior Gigi into freshman year Gigi, because he has a whole nother year of growth and development to go. Anyway, guarding the 4 is going to be huge. He's going to be able to switch everything. The smaller 3s who play the 4, he'll be able to guard. Even some of the bigger guys, I think he can stick his nose in there and handle them a little bit. So you're talking about a versatile piece on defense that can block shots, that can rebound. He'll help UNC as far as running the break, just because he's a very light-footed big man, and everything is just so easy and smooth and fluid with him. So that should help. I think UNC's had some trouble, it seems like, over the last few years with the fast break and with finishing on the fast break. I think this could really, Gigi's commitment could really help with that. And then as far as an area of development, in the NBA, he's going to have to shoot better. I'm probably taking this from Sean. In the NBA, he's going to have to make threes at his size. It's just the way it is now. You can't be a 4 at 6'9" and a half, 6'10", and not be able to shoot competently. So his form looks good. I think it's just development. It's just doing it more reps, more time in the gym. But it's not something that he can't do. It's just something that he has to prove he can do consistently. And I think that's a real area of improvement for him over the next year.
I feel like, hang on, Sean.
Curious. No, sorry. I was just curious. When I was watching him, it looks like he has really short strides on film. Was that something you noticed in person, or how did he look just kind of running the floor?
Yeah,
Because he covers
yeah,
ground quickly, but I feel it almost looked like a Thomas Bryant in terms of how he ran, but maybe a little more fluid.
that's not a bad comparison because he kind of runs on his tippy toes a little bit. Because if you watch him, his heel is very high in the air, and I don't know if that means anything, if he hasn't, somebody has to teach him how to run, or if that is an area of concern or not. Just something I noticed. But yeah, his strides are not the long like Tyler Zeller strides where it takes him, it takes him 7 strides to get across the whole court. He's not that kind, but it's still very fluid, very athletic, and he can do some things with Euro steps and change of direction and change of pace and second jumps. All that stuff is just really athletic, and it's just something UNC hasn't had for a few years, frankly. So it'll be neat to see how that fits into what Hubert Davis wants to do.
Yeah, sorry, Sean. One of the things that Sherrell said a second ago that I think most folks will see upon first watch of Jax is just how fluid he is, and usually that's something that you can't really teach, but something I think folks should remember. And I want to reiterate what Sherrell said a second ago. At 16, 17 years old and a junior in high school, these guys have rarely, with the exception of a handful of people that have come through the NCAA in the last 10 years, rarely are they close to being, physically mature. So you think about a guy like Jackson, who will be able to get in the weight room with Jonas Suration whenever he matriculates and start working on his low body strength. I do think that'll be a huge improvement for his game to go with some of the things that Sherrell talked about him needing to improve on. All right, Sean, what did Sherrell leave on the tree for you there to mention about some potential, huge upsides for Jackson's game and some places he might want to work on?
I mean, I think Sherrell hit it on the head pretty accurately. And, for me, I watched a lot of highlight videos, which I hate doing initially, but was able to watch. It was really when he was in the playoffs. It was his last, state championship, the semifinal and quarterfinal, one of them which Sherrell was at in person and did a great deep dive into. And I know in that one game, there was a move that GG made and Sherrell commented, this will be on all the highlight tapes. And so when there's actually kind of a scouting video associated with GG coming out. So there's kind of 2 moves. One is that I think the drive into a fadeaway that he did from the wing, and then another was just catching the ball at the top of the key, going right to left really quickly. Basically looking like a guard and finishing in 2 dribbles at the rim. So there's definitely some tantalizing things that he does, but I think definitely still needs to tighten up, whether it's ball handling and shooting, which we'll get to. But I think right now it's transition, which Sherrell mentioned. I think he does a good job of turning defense into offense pretty quickly. Of if it's a deflection, block shot, really good timing that he has without fouling, or even grabbing a rebound and pushing it. He does get up and he can. I think he's an alley-oop threat both in the full court and half court set. Half court wise, I'd say being a lob threat, rim runner is probably where he's most comfortable right now. When he catches the ball in the post, he's prone to, taking a few dribbles, backing the defender down, and he kind of always kind of goes to the fadeaway, which is a tough shot. But I think if he can just work on a little jump hook, that would add a lot to his game. And then shooting wise. When I was watching, I think it was the quarterfinal game, grabbed a defensive rebound, dribbled the ball, and knocked one in from, basically the NBA 3-point line. And the thing you notice from his shot is he has a really quick release, especially for a guy that size, but definitely needs to work on the consistency. Over his last 2 high school seasons, he's at around 26% from 3, and in kind of the mid to high 60s from the free throw line. So once again, that doesn't show like, hey, this guy is a knockdown shooter, but I think between the release and just, he's gotten a good volume up early on in his career. And he has, once again, that full season as well as the summer to kind of work on that. And I think a lot of it is just kind of his mechanics a little bit in terms of, when you watch him, you can kind of see his right foot, whether it's starting the shot or finishing the shot, is always a little ahead of his body. So I think it's just a few mechanical tweaks, and I do think he has that potential to become a much better shooter, just given where he's at right now. But once again, a lot to like, but definitely some areas of improvement to be that impact player / one and done that I think everybody will expect of him.
If he is a one and done, I think it'll be. I'm not going to use that comparison. I'll just say, I think he'll make his money as a freshman and being, as you said, kind of Rob Harrington used to call it an elite utility athlete. And I think to me, what that means is just somebody super athletic who, as you said, can rim run, who can rebound, occasionally, if need be, knock down a shot, who can post and who can block shots. And I don't think he'll have the opportunity to showcase his full game, but I don't think we'll see, who he's going to become as a basketball player at UNC. And so I think the stuff that will make an impact for Carolina is what we just mentioned. But, in 5 or 6 years when he's in the NBA, I think you'll see him, grab a rebound, like you said, handle the ball, call it, wave everybody off, come down and just pull up and take a three. I think he's got the ability and the upside to do that, but he's not going to quite be at that finished product level during what's likely his 1 year at UNC.
I mean, I think, and I'm going to show a very myopic view of things here, but that sounds a lot like Marvin Williams. I'm not saying he'll be deployed the way Marvin Williams was as a sixth man at UNC, but very much when he got to the league, when he was drafted, was not the player he became. If you think about how long of a career he had, very, very much he was very athletic. Like the utility, Rob's comment that you just shared, Sherrell, the utility function, I think is probably a great comparison that folks can kind of try to wrap their heads around, even though Gigi is probably a little more athletic than that.
You think about another one, and again, these are not to say he's going to be like this player.
Yeah, we're not doing player comparisons.
We're not doing comparisons. But if you think about Antoine Jamison in college, he was 15 feet and in. That's it. That's all he did. Nothing else out there. Like if he took a jump shot, you were like, but as long as it was 15 feet in, it was around the basket, jump hooks, putbacks, rebounding, all that good stuff. He was able to win National Player of the Year, All-American, all that good stuff. By 2008 in the NBA, he was like a 3-point marksman. Just because the game started to change and he was able to evolve with the game and he was able to develop skills. So I think that's what I'm trying to say with Gigi is that it's just not going to be a situation where he's in college for 4 years and you see the trajectory of him growing as a player. You're going to see flashes of it in likely his 1 year at Carolina. And then when he gets to the NBA, I think in 3 or 4 years, like I said, you'll see the full game and you'll see the growth.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Last thing before we get out of here on this emergency pod. We've gone a little long for emergency pod. Sean, anything you feel like we need to touch on before we wrap the show?
No, I mean, I think, it'll be interesting to see how Gigi performs, especially in July and Peach Jam and things like that with him playing on CP3, who has a very guard dominated team. So it's definitely different than high school, but I think, I know there was reclass discussions. I think him being 1 more year before he gets to school is going to be the best for both individual and team. But once again, this was a commitment that I think in years past we've seen before, where UNC has been, kind of early on a localish prospect, and then he starts to blow up, and other schools enter the fray, and then UNC kind of falls down the totem pole. And this one they stuck it out throughout and landed, a top 10 player with potential. So pretty excited on that and looking forward to seeing how he evolves both in the summer, high school, and then hopefully, the all-star camp circuit as well.
Sherrell, I'll give you the open-ended, anything you want to add question, but also want to throw this in before that. How big of a deal is this for Hubert Davis on the recruiting trail? You mentioned in context how quickly he threw together his first team within like 2 months. Now he's had a full recruiting cycle as the coach. Does this help give him more cachet when he's talking to potential one and done players? Does this help give him, a potential in home that he wouldn't have gotten last year at this time? Can you contextualize for the listeners and viewers how big of a deal this might be?
Oh, absolutely. And it's momentum continuing from the run that they had at the end of the season. I think, Jackson was a kid predisposed to UNC and a UNC offer.
Mhm.
But that actually makes it a little bit tougher because, to Sean's point, once he started blowing up, the school down the street, Duke, came calling, and North Carolina has not beat Duke often for recruits over the last 10 years. It's happening more frequently now over the last 3 or 4 years, but it doesn't happen often. And so they withheld, a furious Duke run. They fought off the home school in South Carolina, and then there were some other schools that have tried to jump in, that just weren't able to do it. So I think it's a big deal that he can go toe to toe with some of the best recruiters in the country. He's shown that now, with multiple players over 2 classes. So there's that. And then, there's part of a cool factor that UNC is trying to get back to, and a confidence that North Carolina would like to have that maybe has been lacking in previous years. And I think Jackson helps them, along with Wilcher and guys like Trimble and guys like RJ Davis and Caleb Love. That helps UNC become kind of a cool school again. And, guys are on the circuit with GG. They like playing with them. So it doesn't hurt that at all. But it does give Hubert, some ammunition to go out and continue doing what he's doing. The other thing on GG, well, let me also say, the CP3 guards be shooting like they shoot like there's no tomorrow.
I think you
So
said that after the
Jackson,
Orlando weekend. You mentioned just how those guys are absolutely the start and end of their offense.
right. So that is good for him because he's able to play in different styles. Where in high school he's the guy, the offense runs through him. In AAU, he's still kind of the guy, but the offense doesn't run through him. So that, I think, is good for him. And he has a high school decision to make. As of the time of this recording, he hasn't picked a high school. His coach, Eric Stallman, is going to be the new head coach at Oak Hill. So there's, people are speculating, will he go there? Will he stay at Ridgeview? Will he look at anything else? So I think that's another part that we have to consider is, where is he going to go next year, and how will that help his development as a player? And then, as he heads towards the UNC in, I guess, 14 and a half months, something like that.
Time all starts running together when you get as old as we are. All right, fellas, I appreciate it. I'll be honest. I am not the recruiting insider here. I'm just the host that kind of tries to steer the ship. But something I did hear on the trail, that is absolutely 100% factual, is that the one thing that pushed GG Jackson from the fence to in North Carolina's camp was Johnny T-shirt. I mean, I think we can all agree that once he heard about Johnny T-shirt and heard that Inside Carolina premium subscribers get an extra 10%, and heard about all of the different gear brands, NIL stuff for players, that you can support the players by buying that gear. Once he heard about that, kid was sold, and that's just what Johnny T-shirt does for UNC and does for Inside Carolina subscribers. So we want you, if you like this content, we want you to like Johnny T-shirt as well. Johnny T-shirt right there on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. Hit them up, johnnytshirt.com. They'll take care of you. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. Always appreciate Sean and Sherrell for what they bring to the show. They make the show. I'm just, like I said, I'm just here. But for Sharon Moran and Sherrell McMillan, I'm Joey Powell. This has been an emergency edition of the Inside Carolina Coast to Coast podcast. We will talk at you sometime in the very near future. Thanks.